Good morning. It is Thursday, the 26th of February. I'm Maeve McMahon and this is Europe Today, your daily dose of European news and analysis. Euronews. Coming up, all eyes on Geneva, where critical nuclear talks between Iran and the US are set to resume. Tehran says an agreement is within reach, but only if Washington respects key preconditions. However, the US president's position remains unclear. Donald Trump has repeatedly threatened to attack Iran if negotiations fail, and Washington has overseen a significant military build-up in the Middle East in an effort to pressure Tehran into a nuclear deal amid rising domestic unrest in the Iranian capital. Let's start by taking a listen to President Donald Trump on his expectations for the talks.
We are in negotiations with them. They want to make a deal, but we haven't heard those secret words. We will never have a nuclear weapon. My preference is to solve this problem through diplomacy. But one thing is certain, I will never allow the world's #1 sponsor of terror to have a nuclear weapon.
And for more on the talks, let's cross over to Euronews Lyon and bring in the head of Euronews Persia desk. That's Babak Kamyar, who's monitoring those meetings for us today. Good morning. Just tell us, what is at stake here? What should we expect?
Good morning, Maeve. Two important things from the Trump's address. The first thing is that the diplomacy is the #1, and the second, Iran never will obtain the nuclear bomb. But the question is that the Iran missile program still is the most complex issue. As the Secretary Rubio mentioned, Iran refuses to talk about his capacity of the ballistic missiles, and even there are some evidences that Iran, the Republic Islamic, has been trying over the past months to develop its capacity for the intercontinental ballistic missiles. And even although already they have the capacity to target some European countries, that's a big problem.
And Babak, of course, what's making everyone nervous, the question, what happens if they do not reach a deal?
Yeah, this is the very complex situation right now. And there are many evidences, such as the military deployment that shows that any military confrontation is possible. And the question is, what objective Trump followed by this operation? Is this just a warning message? Is he trying to, push the Iranian back to the negotiation tables? Is he trying to just targeting some leaders and eliminated some authorities, or even he's thinking about the regime change in Iran? And the question, and the most important thing, is that how Iran will retaliate and respond to any military, even the very limited operation. Iran very openly stated from the back channels, and even very openly, that it's trying to defend itself very harshly, and to respond to target the U.S. military bases in the region, but also all the allies in the Persian Gulf, including the Arab countries.
Okay, Babak,
so it
come
could
here.
Be the conflict go to the regional conflict.
Okay, Babak, thank you so much for that live update this morning there from Euronews Lyon. We will, of course, keep a very close eye on those talks here at Euronews. But also in Geneva today, American negotiators Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff will also be sitting down with a Ukrainian delegation to continue the peace talks that were left in limbo recently. The talks come as the war enters its 5th year and appears to have no end in sight. For more on this, we're joined here in our studio by our very own Sasha Vakalina, our Ukraine correspondent. Good morning, Sasha. What should we watch out for today?
We should watch out for the bilateral meeting between Ukrainian delegation and the US delegation. Now, the Russians are not represented at the table in Geneva, and this is crucial, of course, when it comes to the expectations, right? Donald Trump and Volodymyr Zelensky had a phone call yesterday. Reportedly, Volodymyr Zelensky said that he would want to see an end to Russia's war against Ukraine within 1 year, to what Donald Trump reportedly said that he would want to see it within 1 month, Maeve. Now, also during this conversation, the timeline was discussed. Volodymyr Zelensky said, we expect this meeting today in Geneva to create an opportunity to move talks to the leaders' level. President Trump supports this sequence of steps now, but Moscow does not seem to be supporting that. The Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said he still does not see a point of Vladimir Putin participating in any sort of a meeting with Zelensky. And right before this meeting in Geneva, hours before the negotiations, Russia attacked Ukraine with drones and ballistic missiles pounding Kharkiv, Kyiv and Zaporizhia. And meanwhile, Sasha, yesterday we reported, of course, on that spat between Ukraine, Hungary and Slovakia on the Druzhba pipeline. What is the latest on that? Hungarian leader announced the reinforced security protection around the critical energy infrastructure across Hungary. Now, we heard that from Viktor Orban yesterday, when he also announced a drone ban in one of the regions bordering Ukraine, Maeve. Viktor Orban said we will deploy soldiers and the necessary equipment to repel attacks to key energy facilities. Now, Hungary has not experienced those attacks. In fact, Hungary, unlike other Ukraine neighbor states, has not experienced drone incursions ever since the beginning of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. But this statement and these new measures are indeed coming amid this Druzhba spat and amid the European Union asking Ukraine to accelerate their repairment work over the pipeline infrastructure, which was hit by Russian attack back in end of January. OK, Sasha Vakalina, thank you so much for all those updates. And you can read more about the story and, of course, the outcome of those emergency talks in Brussels on Euronews.com. But now, coming up, we'll be joined by Bernd Lange, a German politician and long-serving member of the European Parliament from the Social Democratic Party of Germany, the CDP. Bernd Lange is the chair of the European Parliament's Committee on International Trade. So the man of the moment, if you like, here on Brussels, with trade being one of the biggest subjects in town. So good morning, Mr. Lange. Thank you so much for joining us here.
Good morning.
On Europe Today.
Yeah.
So look, what a week it's been for the EU-US trade deal. Has it been cursed since the start?
Yeah, it's more or less the same. Each weekend we have to see new developments in the United States. So contrary to our goal to reach stability and predictability with the deal of Scotland, totally the opposite. And we have to react more or less each weekend.
So wait and see every weekend. Tell me, look, the vote is on hold for now. The vote in the European Parliament on that EU-US trade deal. Under what conditions would you actually sign up for it?
Yeah, for us it's crystal clear that the US really is breaking the deal. They started some weeks after they lifted 400 products from 15 as agreed as a baseline tariff to 50 for steel and aluminium, so motorcycles, pumps, agriculture technique and so on. Then we had the Greenland issue, and now we have the tariffs based on Article 122, which is a surcharge. So we have the normal tariffs and 10% and perhaps 15% above. And this means a lot of products are now tariffed more than 15%. So another break of the deal.
But meanwhile, Bernd Lange, the European Commission is putting pressure on you, on the Parliament, to go ahead and vote on this deal. Under what conditions would you bow to this pressure coming from the Commission?
Nobody can make pressure or give pressure to me. I'm a European Parliament representative and the representative of the people. And if you're talking to the people on the street, it's totally clear that we should be clear to the United States. Now, we need a clarification from the United States in written form. We stick to the Scotland deal. So no additional tariffs, no additional products to steel, and the 400 products have to be revised to 15%. This we need.
And what is best for European industry? They, of course, are crying out for some predictability.
Yeah, that's indeed, as I mentioned. So there were two reasons for the deal. One was predictability, and the other, Trump mixed tariff policy with security policy. And therefore, we accepted the deal. The deal is totally unbalanced. It's in favor of the United States. But we said, better a deal than escalation and nothing. But the break is really on the side of the United States, and this has to be stopped. Otherwise, we have uncertainty.
So can you trust the Americans now as trading partners?
That's a question. So it's not a stable issue, of course. When I speak to Ambassador Gier, the USTR of the United States, of course we have a good relation, we can talk, and I can trust him. But the situation and the decision-making in the United States is not based on a democratic process. At the end of the day, the president is deciding alone, and this is not a stable situation. And therefore, we are looking really to have a fair partnership with a lot of reliable partners worldwide. So not have an alternative, but a little bit more stability in the global trade order.
But as you say, every weekend is very unpredictable. And just regarding the tariff threats from last weekend, how should the EU respond to this? Should we start using now really dramatic tools?
Yeah, no, that's not the case. So, excuse me, we are waiting a little bit. I mentioned this to the Commission, but also to the US side. We need clarification that this is an exceptional situation. They will reduce the tariffs, they will bring back the so-called derivatives, and give a guarantee for, let's say, the next 3 years that nothing will happen. And then, of course, we will move on. If in the next week nothing will happen, then we have to reflect countermeasures, counter-tariffs, for example.
And what about the EU-Mercosur deal? You want to see it provisionally applied, but a lot of people would disagree with that.
No, we have sent to court, the European Court of Justice, 3 questions which are not dealing with the content of the more formal issue. And therefore, also some of the people voted in favor of this request to the court say, of course, we can live with the provisional application. So I guess if there is a notification from the Mercosur countries that I expect it coming before the summer break, we should go ahead with the provisional application. And I guess this will be supported by the Parliament as well.
OK, and just one question on Friedrich Merz, his visit to China. What are your takeaways from that?
Yeah, it's a little tricky. On the one side, we have to be clear. The unfair trading practices have to be mentioned, and we have also our defensive instruments. But on the other side, China is a big country. We have also some common interests in climate protection and cooperation. So I guess we have to find the balance between the two sides of the coin. And so far, I guess the Chancellor did quite well.
OK, Bert Lange, thank you so much for coming into us this morning here on Europe Today. And as you heard, of course, Friedrich Merz is indeed in China and has said that the trade imbalance between his country, Germany, and China is, quote, not healthy. Friedrich Merz said he wanted to find ways to reduce this trade deficit, which has quadrupled in the last 5 years. He also said that Beijing has to use its influence with Moscow to help end the war in Ukraine. For more, we can cross straight over now to Berlin and bring in our correspondent, Diana Chesnick. Good morning, Diana. Just tell us more about the trip. Big focus, of course, on the economy.
Indeed, China is the biggest trading partner for Germany. And just to give you one fact, I recently talked to a China expert who advised Merz just last week how to behave in China. And indeed, Merz came to China with a big business delegation, so it's all about economy. And one has to say that the German-Chinese relationship has not been without its frictions. Just last year, Germany suffered a 90 billion trading deficit with China. And just to tell you what this means for Germany, this means 10,000 manufacturing job loss each month. So this is huge. And Merz was telling during his trip that Germany will react and do something about it. But at the same time, Merz brought a major deal for aircraft from Airbus. China is going to buy 120 engines, a huge success. But of course, even though economy is very important, Merz also will be talking and has been talking about geopolitical issues, especially about Russia. Let's have a listen.
China's voice is heard around the world. Its decisions carry weight. But this also brings with it a responsibility. I, therefore, asked my interlocutors today to use their influence to end Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine, an issue on which Beijing can exert influence. We know that signals from Beijing are taken very seriously in Moscow. That goes for words as well as deeds.
Friedrich Merz there. So, Diana, of course, serious geopolitical motives, as you say, for this trip as well.
Indeed, Germany does not do any trading with Russia due to the war in Ukraine. But Germany is also trapped between the US and its unpredictable President Donald Trump and his constant threat because of the tariffs. And on the other hand, a very strong rival, very strong economical rival, China, who with his cheap goods is threatening the German economy and the German businesses. But of course, Germany wants to become independent from the US and it needs China. But also China needs Germany and the European markets because it relies heavily on its exports. So both countries have their cards at hand and can negotiate on the economical issues.
Indeed, not an easy time for the German economy. We're keeping, of course, a very close eye on it. Diana Resnick, thank you so much for that live update from Berlin. But now, moving on, we need to talk about Iceland. The Nordic island, known for its dramatic landscape, is planning to hold a referendum on opening accession talks to join the European Union. It could happen in the next few months. Prime Minister Kristrún Frostadóttir made this very announcement in Warsaw, and our reporter Jakub Janis has been taking a look.
Iceland was supposed to vote on joining the EU in 2027. But now that vote might happen this August. But why the rush? 2 words: Donald Trump. US tariffs are biting, and the US president is threatening to annex nearby Greenland. Perhaps it didn't help that his ambassador nominee just joked about making Iceland America's 52nd state. And with such friends around, suddenly Brussels bureaucracy looks incredibly appealing. Let's investigate together. Iceland actually applied to join the EU in late 2000s after its banking system collapsed. But as the economy recovered, Reykjavik froze negotiations in 2013 and completely withdrew its bid 2 years later. The biggest stumbling block today are fishing rights. Iceland's economy relies on its waters. And handing over control is a tough sell, or at least it was before Brexit. But for Brussels, Iceland brings massive wealth. Its GDP per capita is roughly double the EU's average. But we have to remember their size. Iceland's population is less than 1/1000th of the entire bloc. Plus, they are already deeply integrated. And Iceland is a founding NATO member and sits inside the European Economic Area, adopting EU laws without getting a vote. But hey, let's look also at the big Arctic picture. Because Norway uses the same model. Oslo is also in European Economic Area and outside the EU. And polls show a slim majority still opposes full membership. And then there is Greenland, which left the EU predecessor in 1985 over fishing quotas. Today it remains outside the bloc as an autonomous territory of Denmark. And Donald Trump repeatedly called the EU bad for trade. But for Iceland right now it seems becoming the 52nd US state sounds a whole lot worse. So as they say in Reykjavik, skål!
Jakub Janis reporting for us there. And for more, we're joined here on set by our very own Sasha Vakalina. So really this idea of EU enlargement, Sasha, really making a comeback, if you like.
Absolutely. And I think it's fair to say that this is the new momentum that we have been observing since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine and since Ukraine applied and then was granted the candidate status in June 2022. But it is a tricky one because on one hand, the EU is trying to give it more momentum and to encourage those countries who do want to join the European Union. But the process is still very slow. And even for some of them, like Ukraine, we heard from the President of the European Commission in Kyiv just 2 days ago that you cannot fast-track something this important, and Ukraine's aspiration to join by 2027 seem to be just aspirations at this stage.
Indeed. Sasha Vakalina, thank you so much for that update. And for more on that topic of enlargement and whether or not Ukraine should be fast-tracked into the European Union, you can take a look at our brand new episode of The Ring on Euronews. But that does bring this edition of Europe Today to an end. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, we love having your company. Take care and see you very soon here on Euronews.